Happy Tuesday, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. Today we are going to talk about what's new in the Nik Collection 6. And I'm pretty excited about a couple of these new features. I've been playing with this for about a month or so now. So I'm going to start a little bit different today. Normally I jump right into projects, but I would do a really quick overview with a real quick slideshow. Just so you can kind of see what we're going to be reviewing today. And this info came right from their website. I did not write this. This is copied right from the Nik website. So some of the newest features, your local adjustments are getting new upgrades. And across almost every plugin, the local adjustments have gotten 5 new features. We have had control points, which has been unique to Nik since the very beginning. Now we're going to also have control lines, which I'm going to be showing you, which are very cool when you want to change something that, like a sky or something that kind of goes across your image. And it works similarly to control points with a slight difference, but it's pretty much the same method. And now we can tie the impact of control points and control lines to the brightness and color of specific parts of your image with new color selectivity sliders, which I'll be showing you. You can also, and this is the one I think I'm most excited about, with your local adjustments, your control points and control lines, you can now diffuse, soften the edges of the area, and also invert them, which is amazing. It's something I've been hoping that they would do for a really long time. And you're going to see that happen, and it's like really, really cool. And then you can now also rename those local adjustments or control points. So you, just like you could rename a layer in Photoshop by double clicking it, you're going to do the same thing where it says control point 1. You can double click it and name it so you know exactly what part of your image that control point affects. And now you can also, when you save your work as a preset, you can also save those local adjustments as part of that preset. And then some of the new productivity features, you can create a smart object right from Nik if you're using it as a plugin from Photoshop, which is how I typically work. There's a little box we can check, and when it comes back to Photoshop, it will be a smart object, which lets you now come back to Nik and make adjustments to the things you've just done, which is very cool. You can now call up any of your last 15 plugin edits and apply them in a single click, which I haven't really tried that one yet. And then there's also a new search functionality for those presets that you create yourself. And then there's a few things that are specific to certain plugins. In color effects, it has a new filter, a hue, saturation, and luminance slider. In Define, they've completely redone this and made it, I think, much better. And you can also now save denoising profiles so that you have, presets or profiles that you can run very quickly. In Perspective, and I'm going to be showing you this, there's a new, they call it de-shape tool, so you can warp little parts of your image if you need to. And then there's 2 plugins that they have not updated with this collection yet, but coming in August are going to be new interfaces for Sharpener and HDR effects. And if you have Collection 6 already, or if you purchase it, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, but if you purchase it now, you will get these 2 upgrades free. That will be part of buying this. And I did contact my rep at Nik, and they have given me a discount code for new users of Nik. If you've never purchased the product before, for 15% off, and that's good now through August 30th. And I'm going to put the link to that with my affiliate link because it works along with my link. I'm going to put that in the email that you get from the system tomorrow with the replay from the Zoom system, and also in tomorrow's blog and my newsletter. So it will be in 3 places that you can find that. So you'll have my link as well as the code. If you have version 4 or 5, you can get the upgrade price, which is $79. If you have anything older than that, you have to repurchase it. They only go back 2 versions for upgrades, which is more than most companies do nowadays. So I think that's still a pretty good deal. And the notes, as always, are on sale right now in my store for $7.50. And with those, you get a bonus set of textures. I'm going to show you those real quick here. Let me drag this over. As usual, too many things open here. Let's see if I can get to this. I'm going to close some of my screens. I got so much open. There we go. These 6 textures, and last summer I did a webinar on the Nik Collection 5 when it came out, and I did a versions of this sparkly bokeh. So this is kind of a continuation of that set. And if you don't have last year's set, you could always purchase those notes, because then you'd get those textures, and those are all still in the store. So that will be that's part of this set. And so then we're going to, and the slides I just showed you are also on the front page of the notes, so you have that info handy. So let's jump into some projects and show you how all this works. So let's, what's that, dear? Yes, everything is in the, obviously in the recording, and that will be posted tomorrow. And then the link, you'll get your email from the Zoom system, and I always put the recording link, and I'll also be putting the info on the discount in there, and it'll be in tomorrow's blog, and I'll do a newsletter sometime tomorrow as well. All right, so we're going to start with this fun barn image. This is not edited at all. So we're going to start here by going into our Nik panel. And we're going to first do Nik Define, which is the noise reduction software. And as always, Nik makes its own layer, so we don't have to worry about duplicating our layers there. So they have changed this layout, I think, pretty much completely from what it used to be. So now you can tell it if you wanted to automatically measure the amount of noise and adjust for it, or you can change that to manually do that. I'm going to leave it at automatic because it seemed to work pretty well. I've tried this on a few different images. And then under the reduce noise, I'm going to do, you can do selective or by color ranges. I'm just going to leave it on selective, and this is kind of a global slider here. So I'm going to do contrast noise about 120 and color noise about 120. And it's kind of hard to even see this unless you're really zoomed in, which I did when I initially did this. I'll show you a before and after when we get back to Photoshop. And then I also decided to check this box, I can't talk today, for edge preservation. And what that's going to do is, because it's denoising it, sometimes that softens your edges a little bit. So this is going to keep your edges a little bit sharper. And I'm going to do about 75% on that. And it doesn't have to be exact. And this is a raw file, so it's a raw file I just converted to a JPEG. So I'm not going to do JPEG reduction here. And then I'm just going to play. So this is where, if you want to kind of save this as a basic preset of your own, you can click on Save Profile, which I haven't done yet, and you can tell it's designed for this particular camera. That's the camera I shot this with, and the ISO I shot it with. So you could save that as your own profile, and then you could call that up later, and here it is up here. It shows in this list. And then I'm going to go ahead. I am going to say convert this to a smart object, because once I do that, then all of the things we do will become part of that smart layer. And I'm going to say, okay, you can turn this off, but I'm leaving it so that it will pop up there. It's just telling me the brush tool will be deactivated because now it's a smart filter, so you can just come in and change things. And then we're going to apply it. And there we go. And let's see if we can zoom in, and I'll see if we can do a before and after here. So there's our before. You can see a lot of noise, especially in here. And then the after, definitely smooth that out nicely. So I like that. So it did a good job there. Next, we're going to do Viveza, which is our kind of adjusting your color, tonality, kind of your basic color corrections. I do like that this the box pops up there with the name of the filter, only because it used to, with the last couple versions, it would go to like this white screen that would blind you. So now you get the box. And this is kind of reiterating, now we're on a smart object. So from here, I went to a preset on Vogue, and I used number 11 for adjust foreground. So what this is going to do is add the preset is going to add a control point, and this is adjusting that foreground. So here it is, it says foreground. And if I turn off the check mark, you'll see where it adjusted, how it brightened that foreground. But I'm going to go back up and make some global adjustments. And we're going to do some contrast, like 20, a little bit of saturation, a little bit of structure, so we can crisp it up a little bit. And I'm going to add a little bit of red to make the red on that barn pop a little bit, just about 10%. And then under selective tones, I'm going to bring my highlights down and my shadows up just like 2%, just a teensy bit. All right. So now if we go down here before we leave here, we have that one control point, which is part of our preset, which is our foreground. So now I'm going to show you how the control lines work. So where we have our symbol for the control point, where it has been under selective adjustments, there's a new symbol. And if you hover over it, it says add control line. So when we click this, I am going to come up to the top, and I'm going to click, and you'll see the lines begin. And I'm going to bring this down to about the roof of the barn. So the cool thing too, and I think they had this before, but I never really used it much, is the layer mask that actually shows where this area is affecting. And by moving our luminance and chrominance, it's going to show us the areas that it's going to affect more. So I'm going to, the luminance determines the brightness range of the color. So as we move that, and then the chrominance, this determines the extent of the color hue variations. I'm going to leave that at about 50. So I'm trying to affect the sky, okay? So I can, and the way this works, the difference between a control point where it's affecting everything within that circle, with the control line, it's affecting everything above this bottom line based on that chrominance and luminance. So I can now adjust this line by bringing it down, and you can see how it's picking up more of that sky, which is what we want to adjust a little bit. So once you have this mask pretty much the way you want it to be, and you can come back here, and change it. We're going to turn that mask off. And this is where, if you want to rename this, where it says control line, I'm just going to double click it and say sky. So I know that's what it's affecting, is my sky. And now the adjustments for the sky, we added some structure globally. I'm going to take away some of that structure, so because I don't want my sky to be really crisp. So I'm going to bring that back just about 6%. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of blue and pop that blue in our sky a little. And that's it. That's all I'm going to do with that one. But you can see if I turn that on and off, so there was the before, it's real subtle. And so you can see the sky is softened a hair and it's gone just a tad bluer. If you wanted to push it farther, you can really go, but that's going to be a little overkill. So we're going to stick with it about there. And then we're going to apply it. And it's already got this checked off because we started with a smart object with our first preset that we use, or plugin, not preset. So I'm going to apply that. And there you have it. So now you can see here are both of the Define and Viveza. So if I wanted to come back in and make a change, just double click that one that you want. Okay. And it's going to reopen our Viveza. Okay, hold on, dear. I'll get to the questions in a second. So it's just giving us that same message. But here we are back in our preset now. Sorry, I keep saying preset, in our plugin. And we could, if we decided we wanted to change that, you could, you know, go in and add some more blue, or we could bring back that structure even more on the clouds. Anything you want to change, and then reapply it. So that gives you a little more versatility than what we've had before. Okay, so let's see if we have some questions. So how does this compare to Topaz? Does it do anything differently or better when it comes to noise or sharpness? There is not, well, there is a Sharpener Pro, which we're going to get to. And then we have the denoise. I think the denoise ones are pretty comparable. I think I like the Topaz ones, I think, just because they're, I don't know. It's like most things. It's like personal preference. If you have both, I would definitely do a couple tests and see what you think works better on your image. If you have the Nik suite and you don't have Topaz, I would not run out and buy the Topaz ones. If you have, you know, what happens here in Nik, it's just like with the HDR. I prefer Photomatics because I've been using that for years and years, but the Nik HDR does a great job too. So if you have the Nik suite, I wouldn't go buy something else because this will do what you need it to do. Okay, so I think that answers that. Ernie, so that's it for this project. I'll close that down for a sec. And so here is our before and our after. And I think that's a pretty good job with just a couple little tweaks even. We haven't even done anything really fancy yet. So that's our first project. Checking for, I don't see that. No, can you mask out part of the mask? Yes, you can mask it, and we'll get to that in a bit, Sandy. Thanks. All right, let's open up the, yes, and please make sure you change your, if you're typing in the chat box, it defaults to hosts and panelists. Please change that to everyone so that everybody can see the questions so they know what I'm talking about when I'm answering it. So it will make more sense for everybody. I appreciate that. Okay, so this is one I know I've used way back when for some Nik demos. I use this, I think, in one of my seminars, and I love this image. And I've processed this several ways, and I'm going to do something completely different with it than I have in the past. So this one, we're going to start with analog effects. And I just really started using this a lot, I think last year with the last version of the collection. And if you remember, you know, they had different versions after each of these. It was like, you know, some were version 2, some were version 3, and all this different, like they do still with the HDR and sharpener, because those haven't been done yet. but now they all say Nik 6. So you've got Define to Viveza. They're all the Nik 6 collection. So it's a little less confusing there. I just wish they would alphabetize this panel because it drives me nuts. I'm always looking around for the one I want. It is alphabetized if you go to your filter menu, but it's not here. And I like to use that little panel. So there's our little pop-up so we don't get that bright white screen, which I really love. Okay, so in here, I'm going into the classic camera grouping, and I'm going to use number 8. So with this, I was kind of going for, I want to end up with a real faded type of a photo look. So this I started with the preset, and that kind of gave us a little bit of fading here. And then I decided I wanted to bring back a little more color and detail in the truck. So I'm going to add a control point. So there are a couple places where you can do control points. If you wanted to only put the dirt and scratches, there's control points and lines there. But I'm going to use the one under the basic adjustment, and I'm going to add a control point. And you're really going to see with this one how that the luminance and chrominance and all really adjust this. So I'm going to add my point, and I'm going to make it cover about the size of the truck. And again, you can move it around. And you'll see as I'm moving it how it's already starting to make difference. So it matters like what color your control point is actually on and how it will affect that area. Okay, so I am going to first I want to do some detail extractor, so I'm going to change this to 16. I'm going to just a tad of brightness and some saturation. And then see how this is really going to target it. I'm going to use that layer mask. I'm going to turn that on. And this is where we can tweak it. So you can see right now it's kind of mostly applying to that area right there. So with the luminance, again, this is controlling your brightness. I'm going to make this about there. But I'm going to bring the chrominance down here. And diffusion is where we can soften that edge of the circle. So I'm going to bring this back a little, and you're going to see how it's now affecting much more of the truck. And if I move this point, you can see how it's changing. You know, it's like really, really bright, and it's going to affect it more or less. So you can move these around to get the look that you want. Okay. So I'm going to turn that back off and see how I like it. Oh, something else that's new. In the last version, they got rid of, you know how it used to have all of the different sliders that I'm working with over here in here? Well, some people, I guess, like them in here. I prefer them over here. I think it's easier to do to control them. But if you want to see the sliders over here, there's a little, I gotta remember which one it is. I gotta remember where it went now. Oh, this one up here. This little symbol, if I click that, it turns on all of these sliders. So there's the luminance, the chrominance, the diffusion, and then all of these things up here are right there. So if you like using the sliders right here, you can. If you don't want to see them, like I really don't want to because I prefer these, that little slider icon, you can just click it and then it'll turn that off. So we have some questions. Am I using 6.02? Yes, I just did the last update a day or two ago. They had another tweak. Can you change the shape of the mask? As far as in the circle, no, you can't. It's not a true mask. This is just, it's masking it to show you what it's affecting, but it's not like a layer mask here where you will do that. That's why we have these sliders. That's what makes the mask different, is by playing with the sliders. The chrominance is adjusting the, let me look up their term for it, is the extent of the color hue variation, and the luminance is the brightness range of the color. So you're going to see some more of this in just, I'm going to do the front part of the car in a second. So I'm going to rename this. I keep saying car, it's a truck. Truck side, we'll say. All right, and we're going to turn that off. And you can see how the color is now brightened. So if I turn that off for a second, that's the before, and there's your after. So you can see where it's brightened those areas. And again, you can move this around even with the mask off, and you'll see how it's affecting more or less of the color. So now I want to affect the front grille part, because I want that color to match the rest of it, and I want to brighten that up a little. So I'm going to duplicate this control point, and that's this little symbol right here, which is the same as it was. And if you hover over these, you'll see what they all do. So we can copy that. Sandy, I'm doing that right now, so pay attention. So I've copied it, and here's the new one. So I'm going to move it over here, and then I'm going to make it smaller because I don't need it to be that big. And again, you can see as I'm moving this how it's changing that color. So I'm going to get it where I think it matches the best. I'm not even going to turn on the mask because I can actually see the colors right here. And then again, you can adjust the size if you need to get all of the edges. Because remember, it's not just doing what's in the circle. It's looking for those brightness and the color that we're telling it to look at based on where we put that control point. So that's what's really cool of this. Jean says, I've noticed in some of the apps they no longer have a minus control point like they used to have. Did they replace it with another way to neutralize an effect in selective areas? Yes, that will be because now you can invert a control point, and we'll get to that in a little bit. It is always a circle, but again, it doesn't matter that the circle is bigger than your area. You just want to make sure it covers the area you want to affect, and in this case, it's this hood, in the grille area, because it's looking for that consistency in the tones. So, alrighty, so that's those two. So let's see. So I wanted to make one other change in here. I'm changing the dirt and scratches from eroded. It likes to jump a little, to scratches. And I use this 6th one, which is actually number 24 when you hover over it. It just changed it subtly, and I like that. So we're going to convert this to a smart object. And we're going to apply it. And this is where I'm going to show you about the masking. So you notice when you come back here, we have a mask already built in, and our effect is right here. So I want to bring back a little bit more color in the truck from the original. So I'm going to grab my brush, make my foreground color black. I'm using just a soft round brush, and I want the hardness to be around 50%. I usually just click somewhere in the middle. It doesn't have to be exact. I don't want it to be at full strength. And then the opacity I'm going to bring down to about 20%, because I only want to bring back a little color, not all of it. I don't want to completely mask it. So click on the mask, just like if you were doing a regular mask. Now, because I'm at 20% opacity, I want to make sure that I don't overlap my strokes, because then it would be taking away more than 20%, right? So the thing to remember when you're working at a lower opacity, I'm clicking my mouse and I'm going to do all of this in one complete stroke. I am not lifting my finger. So you're not seeing anything happen on the mask yet, but you'll see that it is masking the color. As long as I don't lift my finger, I could go over this 15 times and it's not going to take away more than that 20% until I let go of my finger and there's that mask. Now, if I go over it again, now it will take off another 20%, right? But if you keep your finger on the mask, it will just do that 20%. The other way you could do it, if you don't think you could do it all in one stroke, let me undo that for a second. If you do your mask at 100%, and we can just go over this quick. So it doesn't matter if it's one stroke or more because it's already at 100%. So let's go over all of this. Obviously, I'm doing this very quickly, but because now I've taken too much off, and this is the same as with any other mask in Photoshop. If you double click the mask, you get a properties box. I can then lower this density to my 20% or dial it in at any number you want, and it's now gray. It's done the same thing. So if you're not sure of the percentage you want to use, you could always do it at 100 and then dial it back by just double clicking on there. So would I compare this to Neo? This is completely different than what Neo does. I think of Nik more as a creative product because there are so many different things you can do. You can do the basics, because you have Viveza, you have, all of the different products. You can do your denoise and your sharpening and different things, but they're targeted to the different things at one time. Where Luminar, they are all together, which is nice, but I think of Luminar more for my overall editing, and I think of this because you have color effects and silver effects and analog effects more as my creative processing. They're both great. They're just, for me, they have different purposes. What's that, dear? Yes, good point, dear. If anybody has already ordered the notes and you haven't gotten the receipt with the link, my website, I don't think it's the site, I think it's the servers from, I host on Amazon Web Services, have been doing weird things since yesterday, and some people haven't gotten the link, so if you ordered it and you haven't gotten the link, please email me and I'll send you a direct link to download. So, yeah, and sometimes after you place an order, if you get a pop-up saying that the firewall is blocking you, that is my security software, not yours, and it does that if it can't identify who owns the IP address. It thinks you're a bot and not a real person. So most likely your order did go through, and if you don't get that receipt, just let me know. Just shoot me an email and I'll take care of it for you. Okay. So let's see. The downloads are in the personal orders of your account. Yes, if you've, on the website, you should be able to log in, but if you are getting that thing blocking you from getting back in, just let me know and I'll take care of it. Not a problem. Thank you. And I'm glad y'all enjoy the notes. All right. Let me go back up. Okay, with two control points overlapping and using different values, is there any concern to pay attention to how much the overlapping occurs? If you were, yes, if you were looking to do different things, and this wasn't typed to everybody, so I'll read it again. With two control points overlapping and using different values, is there any concern to pay attention to how much the overlapping occurs? In this case, no, because I'm looking at those same tones and brightness, so it's finding the same thing in both. If you were doing different things in different areas, then you may have to just pay attention to that. It's always good, just to be aware and make sure that you're getting the result that you want. Okay, so we've done that. We've done that. Now I still want to make this a little more faded. So I'm going to go into my color effects. Whoops, that's because I'm not on the right layer. Yeah. I'm on the mask and not the layer. You always got to pay attention to that. And I know I forget too. We get busy doing what we're doing. Say okay. All right, so I'm going to go into my filters and I'm going to choose vignette lens. And I'm not going to darken it. What I want to do is fade my edges. So instead of a minus number, I'm going to the plus side. And I'm going to change the size of it a little. And the brightness just a tad, and bring back the opacity a little bit. I want a little bit of color at the edges, but I really want that kind of faded there. And then I'm going to add another filter. So this they changed in the last version with color effects. There used to be a button that said to add a filter. Now, if you want to add a filter, when you come over to this side, you don't want to just click the filter, you want to click the plus sign, and that's going to add it below the filter you've already done. I'm going to go to version 2, and I'm going to change my diffusion. So this is not the diffusion for a control point, this is the overall diffusion. So I'm just giving it a softer look. I'm changing my saturation. We're going to leave that at 30. Opacity, we're going to bring back a little. And give it that faded look. And then, again, to bring back a little bit more of the truck, we can do a control point. And place that here. And I always find this slider is like hard to grab, but if you put your cursor at the edge of the circle, you get that arrow, and it makes it a little bit easier, I think, to change that size. And I am changing this diffusion to 57. So I'm taking away some of that softness from that area, and then I'm going to duplicate it and bring it to this front and change it like that, and there you have it. And I think, yeah, oh, wrong one. Sometimes you go in the wrong place too. Pastel. Actually, this is the one I wanted to move. And I'm going to up that saturation just a teensy bit and say apply. No, you can't do a control point with a vignette because a vignette is just around the edge of the image. So there is no control point for that function. And there you have it. That is my kind of faded photo look that I wanted for this image this time around. All right, so we have any other questions? All right, hang on, I scroll down. Is the control point on the vignette? No, it's, yeah, I already answered that. Are there new presets in color effects? There are not any new presets in any of them at this version. Other than that, there's the one new one in color effects. The new filter, I'm sorry, there's one, the hue, saturation, luminance slider, which I have not shown you yet. And I did, yes, I did the control point in the pastel panel instead of the vignette panel. Okay, so that's that one. And so next, I'm going to show you a tiff version. I want to show you the original and kind of where I got it to where I want to start this project. So I always say, you know, take those ugly images that you don't know what to do with and play with them and see what you can do. So this was the original image from the Botanical Garden in New York. A real nothing kind of image, very busy background, lots of weird, you know, branches and things, and I really didn't like that. But I don't know, I like these leaves and the colors. So I started trying to clone out some of the background, and I went, you know what, I still don't like this background anyway, so I'm just going to get rid of the background. So what I did was I selected them and put them on a transparent background. And the reason I have the stems and the leaves separate, once I selected it, you know, sometimes you get that like color fringing, and I still have a little bit right here, around things when you make a selection. Well, you can always, you know, contract your selection and change it. But if I did that, I was afraid my stems would get too thin and they would kind of drop out. So I didn't want to do that to the stems. I only want to do it around the leaves. So that's why these are separate. And then I brought in a couple of my textures, and I know you've seen me use these many times. This one is one I use a lot from, I think this is my first Christmas collection. And you'll see I've stretched the texture because the texture, let's try that again. Hold the shift key, there we go. Has this darker like blue area, and I didn't want that in this image. I just wanted the lighter color. So you can always stretch a texture beyond the frame. You're never limited to just having it be the size of your image. So I started with that one, and then I overlaid one of my bokeh textures to give it a little more color, and then a little bit of the bokeh circles. So to that, we are going to start making some changes. Now, the first thing I wanted to do was the first effects. I only want to affect the petals and the stems and not the background. So I'm going to merge these two layers into one to start with. So I'm going to do layer, merge layers, because they don't need to be separate anymore. And this is another thing that they started, I think, a couple versions ago. And it used to be when, like with most presets, you would, if I wanted something to affect the whole image and I were to apply it right now, it would only see the top layer. Like Topaz and Luminar, they can only see one layer. Well, Nik used to be that way. So it used to be I would, you know, make a combined layer of everything. But now, and like I said, this has been this way for a couple things. If you click on this gear wheel at the bottom of the panel, apply filter 2. Now you can tell it image composite or just the active layer. So right now I want to make changes just to that one layer of the flower itself, not the background. So usually I wanted to do it to everything. But for this adjustment, I only want it to be the active layer. And then I'll say OK. So I'm going to go into my Viveza. So when this opens, it's going to look like a white background, but that's our transparent area. So it's really not affecting that anyway, because there's nothing there. So I'm going to do, under my global adjustments, some contrast, some saturation, some structure, and add just a bit of red. Okay, and then under here, I'm going to bring my highlights down a little. Again, ignoring the background because that's not part of this anyway, and the midtones just a little. Okay, turn my page here. And we're going to do our smart object and apply. Now you don't have to do a smart object. I never really worked a whole lot with smart objects. I always just did everything on separate layers, but it's nice now that we have this option to be able to come back in if I decide I want to make some changes here. Maybe I added too much saturation or I want to change something else here. I can come back into that. Okay. The box around the flowers is just because is the bounding box for the actual flower. It's that selection because I'm on the move tool. So that's why if I were on a different tool, you wouldn't see that. Just because I'm on the move tool and that's the bounding box for where the flowers are. So I'm going to, now that I'm back in here, I decide I want to lower the opacity of this layer some because I think that's a little too heavy. I could go back in and change it. Again, we always have that ability though to just pull back on the opacity as well. I'm going to do about 50 or so %. So now I want to make changes that are going to affect everything, including the background. So I'm going to go back to that gear wheel and change it back to my image composite and say okay. And now I'm going into my color effects. And okay. Whoops. Why did it not? That should be showing me my background too. So let's try that again. Make sure we're on the composite. And it could be because I did a smart object and that was only to that layer. So let's see, we may have to create a merged layer here to get everything in there. Let's try this again. See if it's just no, okay. So because, and I guess I didn't do this when I was writing this, I'm going to cancel that. So because I made this a smart object, it now wants to keep all of my adjustments on this one layer. So I'm going to, you've probably seen me do this before, I'm going to create a merged layer which combines everything into one layer. And that is on a PC, Control, Alt, Shift, and the letter E. On a Mac, it's Command, Option, Shift, E. Alrighty, so now when I go into my color effects, it will apply to everything. There we go. Okay, so there's always, tweaks and things even I'm still learning with working with these new products. So I'm going to go into classical soft focus first. And the method I wanted was diffusion 3 and strength of 58 and diffused detail. I came back up to 20%. Okay, and then I'm going to add a filter, and I went to Glamour Glow, hit that plus sign to add it, and I'm going to change my glow to 53, and bring the saturation back a little bit more, and the glow warmth to 22. And we can do a smart object if we want, and apply. Alrighty. And there you have. And that is our, so considering where we started from to that, from that to that, I think that's a little nicer. And I just like the soft look that it gave this one. So that is that. Thanks, Sandy. Glad you like it. Yes, Danelle says, actually, it was most helpful for us all for you to problem solve live and remind us to think our way out of trouble. Creating a stamp, everything new layer solves the smart object issue. Yeah, if I hadn't done the smart object on this layer, then it wouldn't have been an issue. But because I was switching from you wanting the effect on one layer to everything, so I just ended up doing that, and it solved the problem. The only thing is, even though the smart layer is here, we wouldn't be able to really go back to it because we've already merged everything above it, but that's okay. You could always undo one layer to come back if you really needed to. So there we have that. All right. So, say that again, dear. Yes, when you're using the sliders, if you know the percentage, like if you're following my notes to do it, you can type in the number. Obviously, if you're doing something for the first time, you may not know what percentage you want something to be at, but you definitely can do that. What is the meta preset at the, hold on, we'll get to that in a second. All right, so the next one, now this is a real throwaway image. This is really a bad image, but it's the only shot I had of this building, and it just works for showing you this perspective effects. Even with all the adjustments I'm going to make, it's not perfect, but it's blurry. It was inside of a building. This is in Boston. We were walking back to the parking garage, and I just liked this dome, and just took a quick shot, and it's horrible. It's not in focus, but it's going to serve the purpose for what we need to do here. All right, so first thing I wanted to do before I even go in there is I want to straighten this image a little bit, just so that this bottom is straightened. So I'm going to click on there, click on straighten, and click on the left side, draw my line to what I want to be straight, and there we go. Now when you're cropping and going into any plugin program, in order for the other program to recognize Photoshop's cropping, you want to delete the cropped pixels. So you want to make sure things are cropped the way you want it before you do that, because you're not going to, these pixels that are around the edges are gone. So this works pretty much. I might bring this side in just a hair to kind of balance to where it's cropping, on this edge. About there, and say okay. Actually, I'm going to bring this down a little bit too. Yeah, I'm going to come down with this now, and then you're going to see how I'm going to adjust that upper left corner with the perspective tool. Actually, I'm going to leave that up for now. We'll do that part later. Indecision, as Dave says. It's all thought process as you go. Sometimes you try things, sometimes, works one way, sometimes it works better another way. All right, so we are going to launch. Let's open up our palette. So Meta Presets is all of the presets in the Nik thing. And you'll notice some of them have arrows next to them. So if you come into, like, say, Viveza, this one just says last edit, but some of them actually give you some options. Like you can go right to one of the filters from here, right from color effects under the arrow. And then the meta presets is almost all of the presets. And some are kind of combinations of the two or more of the two different plugins. So I haven't really used these much that way, but I guess if you have some, these are ones that are, I guess, popular, maybe, you could just click one of those and try some presets there. So we are going to go into our perspective. And this is one that's going to be getting updated next month. And it keeps wanting to open on my other screen, so I'm going to drag it back over here. I don't know why it keeps opening on my second monitor. Okay, so we can, so first I want to kind of correct a little bit of the curvature in this one. So I'm going to click, not on auto, but I liked what this one gave me, and it's looking at like the barrel, they call it barrel perspective, and there's different ways depending which way you need it to go. And I moved that to like 32. And then under our perspective, we want to do a vertical correction here. And before I finish that, I'm going to come back, I'm going to come down to the aspect ratio. Preserve means it's going to keep the shape of my original image once it crops for that, which means it's going to probably crop it very weird. I like to do, and it's popping on my other screen, so you can't see it. I can't slide this over. You have the option of unconstrained, preserved, or you can do any standard crops like 16:9, 5:4 proportion, 3:2. So I like to just do unconstrained and crop things the way I want it. So what we do to straighten these now, we're on our verticals. You're just going to grab one of these lines, and using this point, you're going to swing it and line it up with what you want to be straight. So you can put it on something that like should be straight and tell it, okay, straighten that side. And I like this perspective program because you can do better than Photoshop's, because you can independently change each side. So if it's a different degree of angle, you're not limited to being the same on both sides. And then we can preview this and see if we like it. So we're going to hit on our preview. And you can see it has perfectly straightened these sides, which is really not realistic. So I'm going to change the up-down slider a little bit, and you're going to see it moving the angle a little. I'm going to go to like 34. So you can see now these lines are not perfectly straight up and down, the actual building. It's got a slight curve because even if you're looking at it with your eye, you're going to see a little bit of distortion looking up like that. So I didn't want it to be perfectly straight because then it just doesn't look realistic. And now I want to do my cropping. So I'm going to come down to the crop tool. And I'm going to crop down to about there. And that should do fine. And now under reshape, this is the new part. So you have these different grids. I'm going to use the middle one, which gives you all these points. If you go to the next one, it gives you even more points. This one will give you less points. So I'm going to use this one. And you can use this to nudge things around. So as I move this, you can see things moving up above. Now, because I'm working with a straight line, it's a little tricky because I want it to not be curved in there. But if you just tweak it a little bit at a time, and you can see what it's doing, and you can zoom in so you can see it better. So what I wanted to do was kind of make this line a little bit straighter visually inside of the crop, because right there is where my image is going to crop. And that will do for now. And then we'll say apply. Now, like I said, this image is not sharp. Don't worry about it. It's a bad image. And then once we like it, we'll say save. And that's our image. All right, so now I'm going to do a few more things to this and try and make it look a little bit. Actually, whoa, it's almost 5 o'clock already? Holy crap. Let me show you the finish because this one's not great. And I have one more to show you. So we're going to go a couple minutes over today. It's always amazing when I do a test run. It's like, oh yeah, I've got like 10, 15 minutes left. So here is my finished. I did a little bit of Sharpener Pro, then Define, and some Avesa to make the colors pop. So that was what I came up with for this. But like I said, it's just a bad image, but it gives you the idea of, it was more about what you could do with perspective. All right. Oh. Yeah, let's close all these and no. Okay. So last one I have, I'm going to show you a couple things on this one. And this is where we're going to do the inverse control point. So this one is you don't want to miss this, so hang with me for a few minutes. All right. Yes, we have Sharpener Pro. It's right here. You have a raw pre-sharpener and the output sharpener. The sharpener and HDRFX are the two things that are going to be updated for August, and that will be included if you purchase now. All right, so first I'm going to my Viveza. So I'm going to hold off on questions till the end because I want to get through this project. So from here, I'm going to add first I want to just affect this flower. So what I'm looking to do is tone down the background and make my flower pop a little bit. So I am going to add a control point. Before I do anything, we're going to do this with a control point over our flower. Well, it's not really a flower, but sort of was a flower. All right, so I'm going to go about like that. And again, you don't have to worry about these areas because it's only going to affect based on where this control point ends up, what it affects. So I'm going to turn on the mask so we can see. And I'm going to make my luminance. Again, you know, the numbers you're going to have to play with because it's going to depend on your image as to what you need to do. And the diffusion, I'm going to bring back to about there. So again, if I move this control point, you can see how it's changing the petals. If I go off the side, it's going to not pick up the flower at all. So you want to be on some part of this flower, so it's going to affect the most of that. So I'm going to turn our mask off. Then under our basic stuff, I'm going to do a little bit of contrast, saturation, and structure. And then under my selective tones, I'm going to bring down my highlights and up the blacks. And then I'm going to duplicate this now. And then we're going to inverse it. So I've duplicated it. Now I want to affect everything but the flower. We're going to inverse this control point. So I'm going to put this control point over top of the one we had. And now we're going to turn on our mask. So I'm going to this little invert button. We're going to click on that. So now it's going to affect everything that is not in the circle. So it's going to be everything but the flower. Turn our mask on. And we're going to do luminance at 0. Chrominance 66, diffusion, we're going to bring that down to about there. So now instead of, we don't want to see the flower in white, we want to see it in black because all this white area is what we're going to affect. And I think in the notes, I'm looking at it, that I forgot to say to do the inverse button there. So make a note of that. After step 7, where we duplicate it, then you want to invert it. So now down here on this one, we're going to, let's turn that mask off. We're going to do our brightness minus 59. And you can see now we're affecting that background. Saturation 0. Because we duplicated it, that's why these are already adjusted. Structure, I want to soften this, so we're going to go minus 100. Shadows, minus 70. I want to darken that background down. And then I'm going to pop the green just a little bit. And then highlights, minus 40. And there we have it. And there you go. So you can see where we made our flower stronger and then really toned down that background, which is what I was going for. And then the only other thing we haven't touched on is silver effects, and that hasn't changed quite as much, but we're going to take this flower now and turn this into a black and white. So let's go into our silver effects. And I did a preset of this deep landscape blue tone. And under, let's see, brightness, under our color sensitivity, I did, where am I going? No, down here. Okay. We have color filters, we have our selective adjustments screen, and then you can adjust the brightness by color. So the reds I moved to like 80 because I'm brightening it up, the flower itself. So it's, again, it's looking for that original color, even though that's not the color it is now. That's it's got some red in that original. And then the yellows I brought all the way down. And that was it. And apply. And I've done that several times. I just did that on the beginning part of this, and on control points, we just did that with the foreground and background. So you have to watch the replays, because I've done that on several of the projects, and because we are already over time. Let's see if there's anything else. There are no new presets, Linda, in anything other than that one in color effects. So why does the background have small squares showing? I don't know what squares. I wasn't seeing anything on mine. All right, so the second circle that was inverted was the same size as the first, but the second inverted affected all the background, even what was outside the circle of influence. Well, because outside of the circle, we inverted it when we did the color version. So the first control point was affecting the flower. We did the second control point, we duplicated it, put it in the exact same spot, but inverted it. So then it was not affecting anything inside the circle, it was affecting everything outside the circle. That was the inversion, and that is new, which is great, because I've wanted to do that in the past and not known how to do that. So that's the whole point of doing that inversion. If you don't own all the apps and you want to update, they only come as a bundle now. You can no longer purchase individual ones. The individual ones were way back when Nik actually owned this. So if you have any of those, you're going to have to purchase the whole package new. You cannot update unless you have version 4 or 5, which are from the last 2 years. Other than that, you would have to repurchase. How did you duplicate so quickly? Just click on the duplicate control point. There's a button in there for that. And let's see. And don't forget to grab your notes if you want to be able to follow along and recreate the projects. As always, I give you the images that we've used. Let me pop up this again. And yep. So The notes are on sale now for $7.50, the regular $10. That's on sale until next Wednesday. And there will be, for new users only, 15% discount on Nik 6. The code and link will be in tomorrow's replay email, blog, and newsletter, because you have to use my link to get the code, because I'm the only one with this code. And it will be good until the end of August. And the upgrade is, if you have versions 4 or 5, you can upgrade. If you have anything earlier than that, if you have the old free version, if you have the original versions only, then you're going to have to purchase as the whole package. And I think that will do it. A couple of people asked about the chat. I will save the chat, and I will post it with the link to the replay. I'll post that as well, so you can review the questions. But I think I've read most of them out loud, so you should be able to follow along there. And I think that covers it all. A lot of information. Yes, the regular price is $149, so with the discount you save about $24. The upgrade is $79 if you have versions 4 or 5. Thank you, everybody. Do enjoy it. Take a look at the replay again. Like I said, I'll send out all the info tomorrow for the discount. And I really like Nik. I've been using it for years, back when they were selling, when Nik owned it, and Nik Color Effects was like the first plugin I ever purchased when I saw it demonstrated up at the New England conference way back when. That was probably 02, 03, somewhere around there. And I've been using it ever since. And I have been an affiliate now for, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years probably. And I am only an affiliate for products that I like and use and believe in. So, a lot of information. Hope you all enjoyed it. I'm losing my voice, so I'm going to sign off. Can you do a lot of the same effects in Studio? In Topaz Studio 2, no. They're totally different products, and they do totally different things. So you can't do the same types of things in Topaz Studio that you can do here. Flypapers has some nice presets for Nik still available. Okay. If they work with it, that's cool. I haven't tried those. I don't think I ever got those. I have some Flypaper textures, but I've never gotten their presets. So that's good to know. Thanks, Regina. Nik 6 does a lot. So if you don't have the old Topaz, you don't have Luminar or anything else, this is a great way to go. It's inexpensive compared to a lot of other softwares. And it's great for some of the creative stuff. Between this and doing stuff in Photoshop with, textures and things, it will give you a lot of versatility. Yes, Topaz is no longer supporting Studio. They haven't for the last 4 years or 3 years. And if you have it and it works, it's great. I still use mine. There will come a time when our operating systems update and it won't work because they're not updating it any longer. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate your being here. And I will talk to you all soon. Watch for more info tomorrow.